And we are live with SEO Collective. Hi and welcome for May. Woo, 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 woo. Yeah, let's make some noise. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Nik Ranger and this is So I just want to say before we kick things off and thank the lovely Easy Go Gaming for having us here, to recognise that we are on stolen lands. This is originally the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation's lands, and I just want to recognise that some chiefs have ceded, and I want to pay respects to elders past, present, and future. Excellent. Putting that on mute. So it's so great to be able to see all of your faces here. We, of course, are here for our May installation of SEO Collective, and we've got a really, really amazing lineup prepared for you guys tonight. So, of course, I just want to say thank you so much to Easy Go Gaming for hosting us here and being absolutely wonderful and providing a lot of services and things like that here. We will do a bit more of like housekeeping as things go on, but I just want to say thank you to them. So going into it, a little bit of housekeeping, just so that we're all on the same page with this stuff. If you would like to go to the bathrooms, actually that will be on the next slide, but a little bit of a rundown of the agenda for tonight. So obviously 7 p.m. Hot start, short start, introductions. Then we're going to go through and do some news with Too Long Didn't Read Marketing, or TLDR marketing. Saijo sends his apologies. He's unfortunately very unwell. But of course, the wonderful Peter Mačiković and I will be running through that with you shortly. Then, of course, we will have our keynote speaker, who none other is a very dear friend of mine, Alex Carter, who is the UX manager of David Jones. Come on, that was so And of course, that will then lend itself really, really lovely to a Q&A session at the end. Now, you've got your burning questions. I always think it's nice and organic to kind of like let the speaker run through their presentation, and any questions, please ask them at the end, just so that we can be able to have a really, really nice, cohesive, way to be able to do things. And of course, I just want to also say as well that if you are watching here online, hello, I will acknowledge all the online people right now, but thank you so much for tuning in, and if you are watching this on YouTube, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for any new videos and things like that that we release. Back to the in-person stuff. All right. All right, so on to the housekeeping. So for women, there is women's toilets located here on the second floor. We are on the second floor right now. If you go outside to the right, and there's like a little key code door, this is the password there. There is also another photocopy at the door in laminate. It's orange. So if you miss that here, there is also another copy at the door, so you're not going to be like stranded needing to go to the bathroom. Something for men as well. This is located downstairs. There is an elevator, or there is a stairway, but the stairway actually is like a lot of stairs. So just as a heads up, if you really need to go, choose wisely. But there's also a code here as well. So either take a mental note, or again, there is a laminate at the door. Yeah, that is a really, really good tip. Awesome. So without further ado, let's get into it. There has been a lot of interesting things that have happened in SEO over the last month. So for this segment, for anyone who doesn't know this part, we kind of go through everything that happened in April and give our qualitative expert advice on what is happening and what we're seeing from the field. So a little bit of a background about myself. I've been doing SEO for nearly the better part of 10 years, which makes me feel very old. But I love to specialize in technical SEO, and I love to be able to work on a whole heap of different sites, so I can kind of get a bit of a sense of what works at scale, what doesn't, and also look at how things are changing. So this is something that has really become a part of a bread and butter for maintaining a really good practice in SEO. Like having a finger on the pulse is really, really necessary to make sure that you're always ahead of the curve, being proactive with your clients and being proactive with it, being able to understand what's happening and be able to lash and think through these kinds of problems. Peter, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So similar to Nick, I've been following SEO for like 2011. So like, you know, and I used to work on big clients like JB Hi-Fi back when I was in agency life. And basically, yeah, so like it's really one of the great things about SEO, probably the worst thing and the best thing is that it always changes. It's always like changing animals, so you really need to keep up. So someone who has 2 years of SEO experience could be better than someone with 15 years experience, as long as they're always on top of things and doing great work. But in also some ways, the fundamentals are always the same as well. So like this is the kind of thing you kind of keep track of, like what is the state of SEO, how it's going, and then that will advise how you actually approach the way you do SEO. Cool.
100%. All right. So first off the rank, boo indeed. So Google's Search Console, your parameter tool, has officially been turned off. So this was a really, really useful way that we would be able to at least give search engines an understanding of what's happening with our sites. Parameters, of course, are variables and things like that that we'll tack on. Like if we're being able to look at huge strings of things from all kinds of different variations that can happen to these URLs, and it was a really, really great way for us to be able to maintain that. Kind of in sense, they're like, well, you should be using your robots.txt to be able to say that, or to be able to use like different rules and things like that you can be able to tack it back to the original string of the URL. But of course, as we all know, that's sometimes really hard to do that at scale when there's different ways that different sections of the site will be coded. It makes these kinds of things really difficult to kind of think what is going to be best way to be able to do that. I'll let you give your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I think this is dumb. So like Google's justification for removing the URL parameter tool is essentially that like a fraction of like 1% of all users ever actually use it. I am a proud member of that fraction of 1%, and will always be till I die. One of the first things I did when I started this job in January was to configure the URL parameter tool, because there are certain scenarios where you don't want to use something as aggressive as a robots.txt file. You want to actually kind of give an explicit definition to Google of how parameters behave, for example. Like when this is like the equivalent of a UTM parameter, or this is like a narrowing of the defining. Because Google will have this idea like, oh, we're pretty good at figuring out. I've seen your work; it's not that good. So basically, anyone who can see the crawl stats, see like what URLs actually do get indexed using the Search Console API, we actually see like how bad Google gets it. And it's really annoying because like there's URLs that we have like on the website I work on that do get indexed with URL parameters that this tool actually can solve. And the second that they go to it, I look at the call stats, I'm like, oh, that's fine. There's going to be a thing. So it did work. They're not using it anymore. And basically, I really think that there should be more mechanisms in console to actually control this. I think one of the big problems was that the URL parameter tool was still the legacy part of Webmaster Tools. And unlike the other parts of Search Console, which was taken from Webmasters and modernized and part of the new modern Search Console, they never fixed this. They never made it modern. So basically, they just didn't want to do it, so because Google sucked. And basically, now we have one less tool in the toolbox, and pretty soon we'll be similar to paid search, where they just target ROAS, and that's all they do. Basically, we'll have more tools to work with. So yeah,
shots will be fired. Awesome. So second cap off the rank, Google Search is launching signed exchanges for desktop users. So again, I would like to say that Saijo did put this slide deck together.
I can explain it. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. So like a signed exchange is kind of like a trusted version of the HTML content of your page. So if you ever access the URL and you get a little flash of white before the page loads, there's basically a lot of handshaking that goes on between the browser, the domain, like the whole HTTPS thing, so it's secure, that kind of thing. And what a signed exchange does is basically you kind of have like, these are the parts of HTML that are like part of the page. It might be a version of your URL. Think of like how AMP is kind of, if you guys are familiar with AMP, like it's like a .amp or it's very simple. No, it's not AMP, I promise it's not AMP.
Yeah.
But basically it's like, say like a .html.sxg or whatever the format is. So basically you might have like the shell version of your website that's trusted and established. So instead of when you access a URL for the first time, because that's a trusted source within your browser, then they can actually load sign exchange. I believe it's been supported since like Chrome 73 or something like that, but like no one knows that this is a thing. So right now we're in the stage where it's supported. We just have to wait till all the tooling becomes available, because I know you guys are going to go to your devs and say, we need to implement this ASAP. You want like Cloudflare to do it automatically or WordPress to do it automatically. It's because, you know, that's what we all want. So basically it's exciting. It's another tool to make your websites faster and improve the experience for the users. Don't worry about the complex stuff. I don't want you to be the pioneer, to be the first person to figure out how to do it. Like, wait for the technology to arrive, and yeah. But it's a good thing because things can get faster and makes loading a lot easier.
100%. Alrighty. YouTube is launching a new insights tool. For anyone who doesn't really know, YouTube search is actually like the largest search engine in the world.
Second largest. Google's the largest.
No, YouTube's overtaken it.
When?
Uh,
It should be on the news slide.
it was like last year.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
This feels like a citation meeting moment. Okay.
Yeah, no, seriously. In the 2021, I remember this because it was like in the 3-hour 2021 recap.
So we
It's like
should be
going
doing.
through that.
So we should be doing YouTube SEO. Alright. It's
Well,
all
with
YouTube.
Google Mum, like,
It's all YouTube videos. Like, give it up.
well, with Google Mum, which is like multimodal unified models. Well done. Thank you. This is like a relatively new algorithm that Google are using to be able to crawl through and be able to understand a lot of rich media. So like a lot of video content, a lot of images, a lot of multimedia, if you will, so that it can be able to have a greater understanding about the content that is being served across the web. Now, of course, we're seeing some really, really great testing, mainly from the US at the moment, of how that has been looking. But again, if we're seeing like some more work that's been around, like with YouTube, looking at insights tools, I think that there's a lot more that we are able to see from how users are looking at that. And I think, you know, anyone who's looking at, especially a lot of the new structured data changes and amendments that's happening for video schema, really, really cool. You can be able to literally pull out key moments and be able to have like flag stuff. And you're also even seeing that dynamically just happening because Google thinks it's really, really awesome for some really popular videos for that to be able to happen. I think that this is a really, really interesting move towards where media content is kind of like being a lot more dynamic. Very cool.
So should we just invest in video and just ham on that?
Definitely diversified media. Definitely. Yeah.
Oh,
Alrighty.
too.
Yeah.
Dopest thing ever.
Yeah, the dopest thing ever. So
I can talk about it. Sure. Yeah. So OpenAI, who's well known for producing GPT-3 and GPT-2 before that, very powerful transformers which create human readable text and all that kind of stuff. They even created a new thing that's in beta that's only available to some special and selected view called, I believe it's called Dolly 3, like probably pronounced like Wally, but Dolly 2, sorry. And this thing is so cool because people on Twitter share an example. They basically just give a text prompt and it just magically draws it for you. So you can say, I want a photo of, you know, established SEO Nik Ranger dunking a basketball on top of a penguin, and it'll produce it for you, and it's amazing. So like it is like basically what this does is like it's almost
given a brief, people.
This is basically almost a killer for stock photos and their usage on the internet right now. So Getty, all those like crappy stock photos, people just doing things that deniable. You can basically just use this text to generate an original, truly creative image that is amazing. And it's kind of scary that this is going to have shape, like basically you have AI that's doing stuff better than we can, and it's happening in the image space, and it's kind of scary. And you know, if you're a designer, then either your job a lot easier or a lot more redundant. So yeah,
that is really, really cool. I might just swap this one out for you.
What's the question like?
No, that one's louder. What was that?
Yes.
Question.
When's your NFT collection?
NFT, you want me to do NFT?
Yeah,
NFT is all the thing. Did you see what happened to the guy who bought the first tweet? Like, yeah. We just randomly generate like AI things that's it can't be replicated. It all the prompt is unique every single time. You do it.
Yeah, OpenSea.
Yeah, just you call up OpenAI, get your little API, man. That's how my text works.
We'll still take a percentage of profits.
I don't
So,
want
yeah, it's fine.
I do it for the community.
Yeah, well, this is non-profit, so everything goes back. Alrighty. All right. Google Lens is really, really cool. If you guys have never played with this before, I really highly encourage you to be able to do that. A lot of this stuff, a lot of the new amendments and changes are really happening out in the US, but we can still see this now on desktop as well. So you might have seen this when even on desktop as of right today, you might have like right-clicked and be able to see this and be able to pull out like view on Google Lens. There is so much cool stuff that we could be thinking about that we could be able to do here. The problem is that there is not a lot of users actually knowing about this, using about this. Everyone I talk to about
there's no,
that.
like reference material. There's no like you could do cool stuff, but like how's it useful? Like yeah.
But like from a brand perspective, like early adopters of this could be absolutely awesome because like even with Google like giving, it's not really asking for feedback. It's like more like how can we make this experience better? How can we be able to do this? And if you think about how Google works, you kind of follow the money. So I can really see that there's a lot more time and investment put into this space. But think about it from this, like you see an image of, say, I'll use this dress, for example. You really like the dress. This is really, really great. You might look at this via Google Lens and can populate all the places that sell that dress from an image. You don't know anything associated with that. You've done absolutely no work other than just maybe right-click it on the desktop. That's pretty massive, isn't that?
Yeah, the cool part about this is that it's combining like the visual searching with text searching. So this example that Saijo put together is that basically they take a photo of a coach dress, there's a match it, you type in green, you basically said green dress like this dress. Instead of typing that out, you basically provide a visual search with a text search, and then you get responses of the green version of a similar thing. Right. So it's really, really cool because essentially this is kind of building upon all the stuff that they're doing with the shopping graph API. If you guys watched my February talk, if you didn't, then you're behind and you now. But basically, the stuff that they talked about Google I/O, the stuff that like they're building the shopping graph, and then like all the stuff to do with visual search and visual rendering on the page, they're just combining it all into just this massive blob of AI things. And then basically that's hopefully it will change the way we use search, because right now Google Lens isn't really used as that primary search tool. We primarily use it for maybe, I think Google have plans for like Google Maps integration, and like when people have a phone out in China, you can look at the symbols and translate it to English and those kind of things. But basically, they kind of wanted to make it a thing. So like basically, what the promise what Google Glass was, like just look at stuff and it'll tell you what it is, except not having a weird janky looking thing. Maybe something cool.
I'm all for the weird janky things. The more that I can make my life into a video game, the better. But anyway.
The next big thing is too.
Yeah. But you can be able to even look at this on your phone as well. Like you can be able to look at this, look at an image, or even just take a photo of things and be able to use Google Lens to be able to basically reverse engineer this back for you. It's a lot easier in desktop because usually they're static images, of course, but think about the possibilities. Very, very cool. All right. Chrome Dev 102 is testing store reviews via modal when you visit the site. So really, really like this. I feel like this is like just building onto like.
It's very similar to the features that have an Android already when you're using the Google search. It's not an app, it's like the thing in the middle of a Samsung phone and that kind of stuff where you visit a website, it will show like related articles and stuff, but they're actually kind of tying the entities together to Google My Business, or what do they call it today? Google
Profiles.
Oh god, that's awful.
I know.
Google My Business.
Have you looked at my Google profile?
No one
Sorry,
says
what?
that. They just change it every 6 months, so don't bother remembering.
Yeah, it's about as good as the support service. But again, like looking at things like this, especially like with being able to see this, 93% of people make a decision from search first, and reviews play a massive part of that. The first, and we know this because we know this from our process of doing work all the time. The best way to be able to get something is by word of mouth. Second way is online, looking at reviews. So really, really powerful stuff. And I get this question from a lot of my clients. Should we put time into reviews? What about negative reviews? Like, will that negatively impact us? The truth is always the better way of putting that forward. That was a weird way to say that, but if you are conveying yourself in the most honest, direct way, but also being able to respond to reviews in a really professional manner that gives it time and attention to both positive and negative reviews, what you're actually conveying to users is that you are a responsible brand. And that's what you want to be able to convey, because in 2022, people can sniff BS from a mile away. Oh, look at me not swearing.
Yeah,
Wow.
your live stream is so fun.
Sorry. So what if you get a lot of like fake reviews from like people who account forever?
Well, how would you describe a lot? How many?
5 to 20.
520? Well, then get 5,000 good reviews. that's basically the way you combat it.
So there's like 13 reviews every like 1 star, 5 star, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So like the best way to combat it is, well, you have to kind of like tell Google, because Google does weird stuff with reviews and no longer do my business stuff and like fake reviews and stuff. So they might occasionally clean it up and they'll make me able to sort it out. But the best way to combat it is like the classic online reputation management strategy, is to actually basically overwhelm it with positive vibes and negative vibes. So that means you have to have strong marketing automation processes, strong like remarketing. I don't know how strong it is these days with all the privacy laws and stuff, but basically hammer home like positive reviews. Any sort of time someone has purchase your product, they get an email, they respond, and then like the peak happiness, boom, like solicit them for 5 stars, to the moon. So basically, that's what you have to try to do, because that's every single time you get a flood of negative reviews, like in our company, we have a Trustpilot account, which is a third-party thing. I'll do my business, but the same strategy applies. We have a slew of negative reviews. We know it's bad because like we're in a dangerous industry. Well, the solution to that is send an EDM. That's the actual way to combat it. So like that's the way you kind of balance it as like, okay, we receive that money, we need to offset it by getting more positive reviews, and to proactively chase it up. And whilst at the same time you kind of mitigate that and reach out to anyone you can, depending on your platform, to kind of get rid of those negative reviews, but basically kill them with the positive reviews. So yeah. That's the best way to
And
handle it.
also respond professionally, but there are also ways
Yeah,
to be able to. You can be able to sort of like flag and say like, oh, look, this is something that we're trying to deal with, like internally. But but Google has a lot of documentations of further escalations and things like that.
So we've never heard of you, we don't have a customer in your name, services, Wendy's, all of those work fine. Right?
Oh, okay. Yeah. No, I get so I agree with this, but the problem is like smart review doesn't have just like the star rating.
Yeah.
It's like if someone just like a bad review or something like correlated, you can also like
it hurts me.
I had like some reviews taken off through legal services.
Yeah. So like you can, like if someone there's a lot of laws and stuff in regards to like people suing them for defamation and that kind of stuff. So like basically like if there is like a legal process, like for example, if someone making a claim, like they make a criminal claim about you that's not true, or they made something that you can clearly like completely refute, then you can, if it's worth it, go after them for that sort of thing. In regards to like if you're dealing with like a scale, because you said 520, so it's very different than like say someone said like, life stream can't mention the past client. So like basically like let's just say there's a plastic surgeon in Australia who got
We all know where this is going.
Yeah. So like there's different ways to like handle your reputations, like, and there's different ways you can go about it. So like, I mean, it depends on your scenario. If you're dealing with like volume spam, like you assume it's spam, then like basically when people look at reviews and they actually read the responses to negative reviews. So when they look at the reviews, they filter from 5 star to 1 star, those kind of things, and they actually read the responses. That's why response time is so important. People say, hey, I think you accidentally, like when I was managing a small business, I had a 1-star review saying, great, love the product, and like, hey, Rosie, like that's awesome, glad you had a great time. Hey, so like I guess you must have like had slipped when you gave the star review. So like basically if you respond, you be factually true, being transparent, that's a good way to combat it. If you legitimately did something that's kind of like commonly reviewed, then well maybe we have to take it offline and then we could talk strategies how to handle that. But there's like other ways to go about that. But there's people who like, would actually like reach out to people, they'll pay them to remove the reviews. It's like such an important thing that they'll go out and like do it. So there's other mechanisms involved that, but the legality of that will. But that's a question for the ACCC. So like basically like
you can use communities of local guides as well to report it.
Who's a local guide in this room? There we go.
That guy right.
I'll give you my invoice for it.
So do you have like a network of local guides and you can like review bomb like certain businesses? Like this is a great fish and chip shop in so like keyword locality here, and then
well, you're right about like everyone loves the drama, so they go to the 1-star reviews first, right?
Yeah.
We're all guilty of it.
Yeah.
But it's like you're right. If you approach it professionally, then people know, wow, they handled themselves really well.
Yeah.
No, what have I done? Yeah, they've handled themselves really well. So yeah, basically they'll see that if they're going to have an issue with that business, then you're not going to be chewing their head off or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it gets rid of that that barrier.
Yeah. 100%.
Thanks, Jake.
Well done, Jake.
Awesome.
Like to know think about
Good
skills,
enough.
then Google My Business.
All right, so to move on. Okay, so this is really great for secondhand fashion retailers. Google profiles have also added a recycling attribute to that. So if you're dealing with secondhand goods and things like that, and there's a lot of really great little stores and things like that, pop-ups in Brunswick, and that's really awesome. You can be able to add that to your Google profile as well.
So I do have a question. Someone who knows about this more than me. Does this actually impact search at all? Or is it like mainly aesthetic and more of a communication tool? Like there's like people like does it show up more if Google looked into you and say you love getting secondhand clothing? Do they promote that more, or is there like no negative? Is there no impact, positive or negative for like Google My Business?
I'll add a comment here. I think so. I'm doing a talk literally on Friday about like consumer ethics and consumer behaviors post-COVID. And I think what's really interesting that's coming out of, if you've seen Australia Post, like their e-commerce trends and data and things like that, there's been a massive resurgence in the ethical consumer. We've known about this for years, but I think even more prevalent when people got a lot more time and a lot more energy to really think about the kinds of things that they're purchasing. We are, as a community, a lot more mindful about the kinds of things that we're supporting with our dollar. I think a lot of consumers really understand that there is a political thing behind what they actually buy and what they consume. So I think, like, again, I'm thinking literally at this awesome shop where you can take secondhand clothes and actually sell that back, and then they only take a certain type of clothing as well. Because they're sort of more aimed at that premium experience. If you guys know what their brand is, please shout it out because that would be awesome. But for them, it would be so impactful for them to be able to add like further listings and things like that from a local sense. People were literally actively looking for these kinds of things because there's a massive secondhand clothing movement, especially here in Melbourne. So that's what comes to mind when I think about like adding further attributes. And I think adding any attribute to Google profiles has been really impactful. Like when I think like when COVID first hit and we saw times in which there was click and collect and availability and be able to have these windows of time where the stores would be open for, again, not every business did it, and I think we all kind of got annoyed by that, but the businesses that did do that well, they were able to really have a much better customer interaction.
Despite
again-
Google My Business supports best to interfere with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, but I think still, if we were thinking about what is going to be great for the customer, at the end of the day, these things are ways that we can be able to communicate literally from the mobile experience when looking for navigational intent.
Yeah, I agree with that. GP stuff like that.
Alrighty, I'm just a little bit mindful of time, so I am so sure that I talked about the Google Search Console connected for Data Studio
Did we
last
talk
month.
about last month? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 100% sure.
I swear that was a thing last month.
Yeah,
Update policies.
yeah,
The phone number one's interesting because it's kind of a privacy thing, but like
Yeah.
that's basically you could make a request to Google form like that. If someone searches your phone number, they can't do it. I'm actually kind of afraid that telemarketers are like, oh, awesome. And then, like every time you Google a strange phone number, they'll get it.
yeah.
The media CDN one is actually something that's way overdue. Why is it taking Google this long? For actually to produce like really cool video CDNs.
Yeah.
And all the other kind of stuff.
But a
is, like,
few of these are actually from last month, so
are they like the media CDN one was really new?
yeah, that one's new, but
That one's new. I don't know. Like that's why you have to subscribe
Yeah,
to the
but GA
TLDR.
latency issues.
Oh, that's a real time one. That's it's basically GA always sucks, and
Yeah.
there's always problems with it.
But also
so-
too, like there was like Search Console that was down. Like I don't know if anyone saw like positions literally went away for like a red hot moment.
that they forgot
That
something.
was new.
Everyone's like, oh my god, like we're gonna be no more positions. It's like positionless searches here.
Yeah. I think it was pretty obvious that that was a
True.
bug. But anyway, I digress. Oh, this one is really cool to talk about. So
Always America first.
I know. It's
It's
almost, yeah.
Where's
It's
the
almost like
place?
Google is US based.
I want it all in Switzerland.
That is true. Well, I think, well, look, yeah, and shout out to all the team in Zurich. But Google, the US is the largest market for Google search. So I think it makes sense if they wanted to test them out
And they
first.
should use Australia as the experiment for like testing ground.
We obviously have a bias here.
Us?
Yeah, but of course, like, hands up here who uses Google Merchant Center.
Not anymore.
Yeah, I'm on seeing those hands. Google Merchant Center is absolutely awesome. You can be able to have like free listings and things like that in there, as well as paid. So when that got introduced, there was a lot of really, really cool stuff that we as SEOs could be able to go in and be able to influence. Yeah, they're adding some more insights tools and things like that for free, which is great because we really didn't get too much granularity around, is it valid? Is it not valid? Where is it populating? You kind of have to go in and be able to check some of these terms and things like that. Using obviously, whatever tool to be able to check like, local listings.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
It's great because like the existing tools in Merchant Center aren't that great for analysis. Like it's not like GA or anything where you can break down things and like there's some interesting stuff in there regards like price competitiveness, but like yeah. And remember like my hot take was that Merchant Center optimization is the hot SEO optimization thing this year. And looking like on track, so get on it. If you guys don't know how to optimize the 65 different attributes for Merchant Center feeds, you guys suck. So
Oh, okay, we're going real aggressive here. Usually when I have Peter Mead up here, he's a little bit
he's
nicer.
a friendly guy. But like,
Oh my god, we got good Peter and evil Peter.
Evil Peter, yeah.
I
We
love
get the wrong
that.
Peter. We get the Peter doesn't get to work in e-commerce.
Yeah. But shout out to Peter Mead, who is on his way to Mexico at the moment for Sandwich Summer Jam. Woo. Yeah. So just on that as well, I've always found that whenever I'm trying to tag up things from Google Merchant Center to Google Analytics, it completely kind of doesn't really let me able to see too much about that as well. And that was just going back to what you were saying before about that. So I'm really interested to have like an embedded tool within the tool that gives me a little bit more insight. So hopefully this will be a successful testing in the US. We'll slowly be able to see this start to populate in our Google Merchant Center. But if you got any US clients, squeeze away. Oh yeah, and there is a lot more specification updates. A lot of this will happen. This is actually live as of the 29th of April, and there's a lot of things. I started to write of like if they are available, if they're not available. That's actually my bad because I wanted to actually amend this slide because I look at this stuff a lot. But when it comes to like your unique product identifiers, and I've got a little thing there like either a GTIN, a brand, an NPM. They're like to just basically attributes of numbers associated with products you can be able to validate in Merch Center. But if they are available, there are things that they're always saying like that's best practice, always have them there if you have them, because it gives Google a lot more information about what it is there. If they're not available, yeah, it's just more granularity around that.
Different fallbacks for different scenarios. So like basically a GTIN is basically a barcode. So like there's 12 digits, 14 digits, etc. But in a scenario where you have a custom product, there's a bunch of fallbacks because how many people don't pay search and say, oh, you got an invalid GTIN or whatever, and then like your best product's no longer serving. So yeah, basically Google has given you more options. Yeah.
And there will be further rollouts June of this year as well. But we'll talk about that when June comes.
Yeah.
Or even August comes, we'll talk about June.
That's all about it.
All right, 7:33 p.m.
Yes.
So I'm now, thank you so much, Peter, for your time. Yeah, I'll take this backward.
I'm gone.
Alrighty. So now I'd like to open up the floor to our illustrious guest keynote speaker. A lot of people will know who we're talking about. That's this very, very handsome gentleman there. His name is Alex Carter. He is a UX manager of David Jones. We worked together on Petspiration Group, and it was such a great time. And I would love to welcome to the stage Alex Carter. Woo, 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 woo!
Thanks, Nick. So yes,
Lovely to be here. Thank you for the invite tonight. I am going to talk to you about some technical stuff that we've been doing at David Jones. Like Nick said, I was at Petstock before, where the studio vault account currently is. But yeah, so just a little bit about me. So I have been in this space for about 5 years now. So I was at Petstock as the e-commerce manager there. I did quite a complex migration, which they're still probably doing the tail end of it now, back in October last year. But now I've moved to David Jones as their user experience manager, and I picked up SEO not as a request, but just as a bit of an interest, and noticing that they really hadn't focused on it for a little while. Actually, they hadn't done so forever. When they did their migration back in 2000, and I think it was 14 or 17. Don't quote me on either of them, but the e-commerce side of their business was quite small. They're traditionally a brick and mortar business. They're 184 years old. So they have some pretty strong in-depth, I guess, legacy and traits. But obviously COVID changed that, like it did for a lot of businesses. Overnight, they literally went from being 99% brick and mortar to then 99% being digital. So as I've joined the team and as I've joined the business, I've now come on board and basically kind of looked at all that and gone, we have some problems here, and how do we rectify? So I'm going to talk to you today just around the top one, which is technical. And I'm not going to claim to be an actual expert. You guys are most likely more experienced and you know more about this. But what I am going to do is take you through the journey on how we actually got to where we are today. Some of the things that we picked up on very, very early on. But then also how we're approaching it too. What are the tools that we're utilizing? How are we actually going? Because again, it's basically a needle in a haystack. So yeah, technical SEO. So off page, I'll leave that to the marketers. On site, on page, obviously we can control that with our trade team as well. But there's an education piece there that we've had to go through. So even down to the basics of what is a meta description, why do we write it, how do we write it, and taking the team and the business through that digital transformation. So yeah, as you all are very, very much aware of this, so technical forms kind of part of that on-page SEO. So when I joined, literally, I actually had to do a bit of a review of the website beforehand as part of my I guess, onboarding. What were some of my recommendations? And immediately, what anyone would do, and I'm sure that you've done so as well, is you go onto a page, you inspect it, you have a look at it, you tinker with it, you pick up some key things, right? If any of you have been to the David Jones website, which I hope you are as shoppers, as avid fashion shoppers, you will see that it isn't the best user experience. Quite hand on heart, it's not laid out in the right way. It wasn't built to really accommodate this type of volume of customer that we have. When they did migrate over to their new platform, which is eStar, it is a custom platform as well. So we basically have very, very little control over what we can do, and we have to go through agency. We then have to almost, I wouldn't say justify, but we have to say, why is it important to do this? And then they go, will it be important to do it across all of our brands? Because we're all operating on the same, basically, code base in the legacy, right? So it's a minefield. Every step that you have to take forward, you know what the best practice is, but you have to kind of, provide all the evidence, and it just slows down the process in its entirety. So we've come on board. We're now taking this back in-house, in a sense. We're controlling it a lot more. We've got the buy-in by the business, and we've also got the people on the ground now to actually do it as well. And looking under the hood, I can tell you right now, is quite scary. It's not great, but it's definitely fixable. And there are definitely things that we can do that we know is that low-hanging fruit. So I mean, we talk about these, right? So this is where we started, right? So we just basically went on board and we said, okay, cool, let's have a look at keywords, but they've got some basic information that we can actually look at to try and understand from a technical point of view where things are really going wrong. Neither of these tools are really used for it in that purpose, but we've actually hijacked them and done that. We went for Ahrefs actually over SEMrush, so quite familiar with Zen. But in this case here, was a little bit more technically focused for us. It was able to provide us some of that top line stuff. So we were able to start building pictures to what we were actually looking at. And again, we all compare our businesses compared a lot to Maya. Maya started on this journey 7 or 8 years ago. So they are 7 or 8 years ahead of us. They walked into COVID being in a very, very, very strong position with all of this. They basically went on that digital transformation very, very early on, and we are now chasing their tail. So I'm sure you may or may not have heard of their profits over the last 6 months, and they've been very, very strong. If you actually have a look at them through the competitor analysis, you will see that they are doing a fantastic job at their organic traffic. And a part of that is their long tails as well with how they've done that. They started it back in, I think, June last year, and they were just playing with it, seeing how it was going to go. And then all of a sudden in October, it literally took off. And from what we're seeing now, it's worth, almost, I think it's 1 to 2 mil. Actually, it's through AHS, so it's an assumption, but it is worth a lot. And we can actually see that it's now starting to impact us as well. So from there, we then had a look at, okay, so what else can we do? So where can we actually have a look at on page as well? What are some of the issues that we're seeing? What are some of the issues that customers are seeing? And Full Story is actually very, very good at that. So if you haven't heard of Full Story, it's Hotjar on steroids, basically. But it's also a very good insight into where we're starting to see some of these error rates, what we're starting to see with error clicks as well. And it's actually giving us clear direction to some of those key areas that we need to fix up straight away. So Full Story has been very, very good with us. Again, starting to build that picture with what are we looking at here? How bad are things? Where are these Ajax errors coming from? And one of them was like the navigation, which we didn't realize, it affects 4% of customers who actually go on. But 4% of customers with the scale that we have is a lot, right? So we started to build that out as well, started to understand, okay, so, right, they're technical issues that we can hand over to eStar. But then from there, we actually started looking at something that was a little bit more advanced. So the Spotify guys are over here as well. So this is, this is where we started to really piece it all, like create that 360 model. And we started to look at what the optimization opportunities were. So I've put up here 2, I guess, brands or crawlers. So Spotify is very good at enterprise level. So we're talking pages, tens of millions of pages. These guys can do it, in a heartbeat. And then you've got the other side here, which is Jet Octopus, which is probably more for those who wanting to understand where things are at and then be able to build, the stepping stones, and then to probably eventually get into Spotify, because that's where they're going to be the ones who do the expert stuff as well. So within all of that, we start to talk about this, okay? So we start looking at this part here, which is, and I've stolen this, thank you guys. But this is where the efficiency of your crawl starts to come into it as well, right? So we start looking at, okay, we know what the pages are that are being indexed. We know that we can start looking at our sitemap. We can start redirecting them with robots, all of that type of jargon. But how do we start making these crawls more efficient? And how do we start getting those circles to kind of get closer together? So you've got your invisible pages and you've got your orphan pages. And Google likes, websites to be flat, right? So we start to see how deep they're actually going, how deep these pages are. How do we start getting them further up the stream rather than further down? And some of the things that we were finding is that we didn't have canonicals on PDP, for example. So the way that we were building our PDP was based on the customer journey, on how they got to that page. So we could have 14 or 15 different PDP URLs, and that's all being spread out. It was the same with what we call product landing pages or collection pages. They were the same. So once we started to see this data and start to see where all of this was, and this is not us, by the way, I'd love it if it was, but it wasn't. Ours is quite small. But once we started to understand all that, we could start to really make some of these recommendations and some of these changes as well. So where to start? Like we started here, right? And I'm sure most people do. But again, you can kind of chase your tail with Search Console. You can kind of keep going around in circles. It's changing all the time. You fix one error, then it breaks 7 others, or you get rid of all your errors and you're like, hey, it's all green and orange. And then all of a sudden you have 52,000 pages that, are causing you grief. But it is a good indication of the health of your website. Trying to understand all that though, unless you're an actual expert, which you guys probably are, but trying to also communicate that back to your teams is sometimes hard. So understand your CI/CD process. So where we were was all of this was with our third party, right? Full control, absolutely full control. What we then started to bring in was a split. So we moved obviously this to them because that's their IP and they tell us that all the time. But then we brought this in over the top. So what we were starting to do was that's accountability. Okay, so we could hold them accountable for what they were being produced. We started to get a glimpse under that hood. So it goes both ways. They are now starting to see the benefits of it because they're starting to see it to their entire platform. And what, it's like, have you been living under a rock all these years? You think you got the best platform. Until someone comes in and actually questions it, they don't know. So that is being a real key area for us. And make sure that you cover all your bases, right? So I look at it at the 3, right? So I started with the 3 circles where you had the technical, you had on page and then off page, where you could use the same thing in this case here, right? So Full Story is a really good platform for this type of insight, right? It'll give you some really critical errors that you probably didn't see, which is causing issues on your pages. It does actually have a look at your schema as well, which is cool. It's a little known fact, but it does. So look at obviously link building, keyword research, content analysis, and also the site audit through here. Okay, so they're in multiple locations at the moment, but you can kind of start to draw that picture together and then finalize and maximize that crawl with an SEO crawler. Now, if you have that budget. This is probably key. Like I've got a big team now, all right? So I'm very, very lucky. So I've got this guy at the top, he funds me. I've got obviously me who does the technical side, on page, which is my e-commerce manager, and then I've got the CI/CD team, all right? So don't piss him off. But clearly segment who's going to do what. Now, I've got multiple people here, but this is a core functionality to making this work. So if you're a business of 10 people or 5 people or 2 people, this still has to happen, right? So make sure that you make it quite clear with who owns what, support it as well, and then you actually start to see the benefits. Create a plan. So make sure that you're tracking it. So again, look at all of this stuff here. This was actually 1 month worth of work that we were trying to achieve, right? But it became quite clear that we needed to start prioritizing in key areas. We also need to make sure that the ownership of those key areas was right. So hence going back to technical, I do technical. My counterpart does the on-page stuff, as well as the Laylee who does the CI/CD. So we track everything now. We document everything. We do regular whips. We've got a fantastic support agency who's also driving this as well, which has been excellent. But yeah, it's all about that plan. So where do we leave from here? So we started going to accessibility as well. So we're not accessible at all. But doing these simple tests as well does highlight, H1, H2s, some key areas. We weren't using a Google font. We're actually using a font that we should not be using. But again, it came up as it wasn't. I think we're in size 11 or 12. So it's quite small. It's very, very hard. So what does that accessibility look like? When we up it to 16, right? Well, then everything goes completely haywire. The pages start to render differently, and it's just layout is just crazy. So we took this opportunity to be like, okay, what's also going to create us more efficiency? So we went to a Google font, or we're going to a Google font as well. We've implemented a design system as well to keep everything uniform across pages, but also let it go back to our marketing team. So when COVID came along, marketing basically had free reign of the website, which is never going to be great. All right, so down to traditional marketers who don't understand why WebM is key, to the performance of your website, why uploading a 4 meg banner to your homepage actually makes your traffic go, the complete opposite way. Like, they just see it as a pretty thing. So we've actually started to educate our internal teams as well on what best practice is. And in fairness, they kind of knew what it was, but again, because we were running so fast to try and compete with our biggest competitor and move digital, things just got left behind. And that's how we ended up here today. So yeah, here's just some of the examples, doing side-by-side comparison. Yeah, so I guess where we are with keyword research. So this is really important for us now. We're starting to be able to do this with Jake and the trade team. We're actually starting to focus on, okay, so what do we need to do in order to be on page 1? Because we're not on page 1. It's my favorite quote, which is, you can hide a dead body on page 2. And that's where we are. Actually, we're on page 3 in a lot of these cases. So, we've got our work cut out for us because Google doesn't see us as a high-performing website. The amount of pages that we're indexing right now is ridiculous. Our crawl budget must be insane. But, the opposite side of that is, once we refine it, once we make it better, once we improve the performance, once we do the schema, once we do all of these things, once we rewrite the sitemap, once we do, the basics that you and I all know, we should see what we class as a new baseline. We're not going to class it as something that is, the new high achiever. We're classing it as bringing it back into the 20th century. So I think that's really important, is to ground yourself. So make sure that you realize where you are today, where you need to be tomorrow, and then where you should be into the future. So page performance tracking. So this is just some of the stuff that we do start to see, and the Botify guys will attest to this. We can start to understand how many of these pages are underperforming from a speed point of view. So where are the opportunities as well, and what that spits out as to why is the key area. Why are we having these issues, and the how to fix. So yeah, like I was saying, this is our new product structure. To canonicalize, we've also got nested breadcrumbs for the first time. So our product doesn't have a home. It can live in like 5 or 6 different locations, which is insane. And try telling Google that. Google's lazy, so it literally goes, yeah, no, piss off. So add new robots.txt as well. And this was something that we actually, again, God, I'm giving you guys way too much credit. Anyway, so the Botify guys actually pointed this out. Very key. We knew this, but robots.txt wasn't picking up on the fact that 6 months ago we launched a new on-site search and merge called Fred Hopper. And what we were actually doing was, with our search parameters here, we have what was our CMS, which is eStar. And then above it, you'll see that you've got search Q and search FH. Search FH is all of our on-site search and merge. So Google was indexing all of our on-site search. Yeah. Yeah. Right. But again, during COVID, we had to be very agile. A lot of our feedback from customers was that our on-site search was horrible, and it was. Like, if you go to our UAT site and you try to search red shirts, or it will give you red jumper, right? Actually, it won't even give you the color red. Actually, if it gives you a shirt, well done. So we had to be agile. So we had to quickly find a solution that met our customers' needs. But unfortunately, because we were so quick, we forgot the basics and the impacts that some of that have. Right? So we're splitting, we're duplicating. Restructure of that sitemap as well. So it was all in one location. So we've split out our key areas now. So we've broken out what are our high traffic areas. So they're brands. So we are a department store. So brands for us is very, very key to bring in those customers. our locations as well, product pages and canonicalized product pages, and then finally our category pages as well. So we're very quickly able to identify what those key areas were and then to restructure this. Again, I will give credit. Botify has a really cool tool where you can actually test your row or CXT file as well. That's pretty cool. Yep, so that's, yeah. So this was actually, I was very excited. No one else was excited for me, but we ended up on page 1 for skincare. Now, skincare doesn't have that high volume. I think it's 5,500, and it's split into 2. So skin care, 2 words, and skincare, 1 word. But combined is about 10. But it is a highly competitive search term that all that that everyone else looks for, right? So we're talking Mecca, we're talking Maya, the Iconic even. So this was a really big moment for me. And when I messaged one of the trade managers and said, did you realize that skincare is actually appearing on page 1 of Google search results? And she wrote back and she's like, that might be why we had a 4.5% increase in sales last week. All right, so just that movement onto that page was enough, right? So that's significant. Now, number 10 is actually better than number 9. I don't know if you realize that. So people often scroll to the very bottom of the page and then they see the first one above. So it kind of works in reverse, right? So I'm kind of like, unless you're going to get to 4 or 3, keep it at 10 for the moment. That'd be really good. But yeah, right. But again, that was telling, the team how to write these meta descriptions. So taking them through the process, educating them on that as well, and making sure that those pages and those structures behind it were all key. Another example that we had where we ran into an issue, and I know I've got 4 minutes left, but we implemented Bizarre Voice for ratings and reviews. And again, there was an issue with the actual implementation on the product page where we actually Google was getting confused with all the reviews, all the star ratings. It found the first product and then it found multiple reviews for it, right? So, but that again was coming up in GSC as a massive error. Again, we had to put reviews in really quickly, syndicated reviews as well to acquire them overnight. But again, it came at the cost of SEO. So we fixed that. All of that had gone down. Again, it adds into this as to why Google's like, that's a healthy page, right? We did pagination as well. We had 90 products on a page, too big for mobile, massive, massive, massive load for mobile. Reduced it down to 30%, right? So those slides that I showed you before, where we're starting to see, all those pages that were underperforming and they were over, 2.5 seconds, or, they weren't to where they needed to be, we were able to quite clearly look at all of those category pages and then have a look at the load of those pages and basically go, well, if we just reduce it to 30, well, then there's half, well, actually that's most of our problem gone for mobile. So technical does come in a few different ways. I mean, like I said, you guys are definitely probably more knowledgeable in this space than what I am. But I was just telling you, basically from a David Jones point of view, we are an old brand. We are a big brand, but we were stuck in the past. And these are some of the ways that we're trying to overcome them. So talk to me in 12 months' time, and I hope that I'll be able to tell you what all of this has done. We are on a headless, discussion now as well, which I think most businesses of our size are. Yep. So that's going to be really exciting. But we're setting the foundation. So yeah. So thank you all. I really appreciate your time. Hope you got something out of it.
I'm going to also steal this back away as well. So we've got some more ones here too. This one's back to you. That was awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. Of course, I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of questions and things like that you're thinking of as I can see this wonderful presentation. So I'm going to open up the floor now to any questions. And we've got one right here from Evil Peter.
Cool. So thanks for speaking. So you said that you implemented design systems. Was there someone with internal ownership that was responsible for communicating design systems between, like, say, the people who wanted to do brand style design versus, like, say, front end developers versus, like, people who did, like, more banner style advertising and marketing communication? Like, did you have internal ownership? Like, how was that? Did you hire specific design systems? Like, how did that work internally? And, like, what was the resistance between the different people who wanted some kind of input and how design systems should actually work?
Yeah, so the design system was my team. So I am very lucky. I've got a very good UX designer and I've got a fantastic CRO lead as well. And they had the idea before I started. So I started in January, so I've only been there, 4 months. And it was quite clear from some of our marketing executions, but also some of the error response on page, at cart as well, that we needed to review it. We needed to actually align it between teams as well. And to your point, actually implement it too. Resistance from the other teams wasn't as bad as what I've had in the past, let's say. So traditional marketers versus your new style or digital marketers can be quite confrontational and not fun, to be honest. But everyone was quite receptive to it because what we did was we showed the efficiencies behind this and what the data supported in moving it to this could actually do from their own efficiency of creating these assets, but then also what we could achieve on site. So we do a lot of A/B testing. So we use Optimizely for a lot of our A/B testing to make sure. We always wait until we get to statistic as well, unless, we did a brand page and a collection page review. Unfortunately, they're slower, but we had to make assumptions, but we were pretty confident, right? We can't guess our way through this. It's one thing for me to go, I have this opinion and I think it should be this way. Right, that's how you get into an argument with YouTube. That was fun before, by the way, around YouTube and Google. But like that's if you got the data behind it to say, well, we know that this is going to work and that this is going to make things better, you're going to have less argument on the other side. The other one was taking them on the journey. Like, you got to take them on the journey, otherwise it can come across as being an attack. So we were very clear with them when we said, hey, we're going to start doing this and we hope that it's going to do that. So we want your involvement in it as well. But then when it came push to shove, we were just like, this is the best approach. So because they knew that we were doing it and because we had all those things, they were very open to it. And we were very lucky that I think they also self-reflected and said, yeah, the last 2 years, we were just doing whatever we could. Right? Like a CTA with an underline, that's not CTA. Like, that's you're highlighting something, but you're hoping that people are going to click on it, right? People don't. So once you put that back into layman's terms, they kind of go, oh, of course, like, yeah, I go to JB and I click on the button. I don't click on the copy, you have to click on the button, right? So you create those in-life examples and experiences.
Wait, nudge. Do we have any other questions for the floor? We've got one right here.
Yeah, just it's more like from like great presentation, done a very good job. So are you an SEO now?
Am I in SEO?
Yeah, so that's not the main question. I expected something around like UX too. It's like, so you're an SEO now. No, but, so my question is like, why David Jones? At the end of the day, they are and you are an UX expert, but now you've done some SEO work. I don't understand why they didn't hire like an SEO specialist.
It will come eventually. I could argue that UX is SEO. All right, so I could.
We're open to that,
right? Exactly right. So you could argue that, hey, someone trying to find a product on Google is an experience to try and find your brand, right? So we all go down with that mentality. How does someone find your brand, your product, what you're serving quicker and easier? So to me, that's providing that service is a user experience, and as a result, SEO comes of it. I love this type of stuff as well. I find it really, really interesting. I love the technical side. I love the people, you guys as well, with hammy ideas, and I love how your way might be different to Nik's way, but it will get to the same results, right? And I love how unique it is for every brand, for every person. I love that it's not generic. So yeah, like it was something that no one asked me to do. My boss actually clearly said, we have not done anything with this. Please don't look at it. Please don't judge. I know it's shit, but it is what it is. And I was like, well, actually, it's not. It is bad, but it's not that bad, and it's easily fixable. Like it's easily, if we've got the time and the resources, which we do, people are here, they just don't know how to do it, right? So educating the team has been key to that, and to actually see our tree team be really, really energized for the first time in quite a while and excited by this. And pointing out the fact that, yes, we're on page, the first page of Google with, being number 10. I was excited. They weren't understanding of how, and why I was that excited until they looked at the sales and then they saw the result. And then all of a sudden overnight, we've now got a competition for writing 100 meta descriptions by each area by the end of this week. Who can do it first? Jake's putting us up with Montalto for a wine tasting, which has been really but this is the competitiveness of it. And this is why I love it, is because it is competitive. And I think tonight has been a real clear example of how much it changes. And it changes often, so it's never boring. So you can't just sit and forget. So yeah.
So, got a question in the back here.
Hello. Yeah. Josh here. Thanks, Alex. That was a good presentation. It's good to hear from someone who's working internally at like a large company. More of a comment first, and then I've got a question. What I feel like with you guys, it definitely that is really positive is, even though you're saying that you guys are like far back from Maya, that you guys definitely have a better product than Maya. Like the buyers. Whatever like the buyers are doing, David Jones and the merchandisers, like it's definitely like better brands, better products. So that is going to that will definitely help you guys.
Yep.
I feel. And then question, how do you feel about, because I've seen my subfolder that you mentioned at the start with targeting long-tail keywords, and I think they launched like 30 or 40,000 pages in a month or 2 months from that time. And you've got Kogan. I think Kogan has done the same thing. I think Catch has too. So some of these really big retailers that are using this similar strategy. When you see Maya doing something like this, do you feel like that you guys have no choice but to go down that route too? Because when you do the keyword research and look at what these companies have done, they're really dominating search. So it's kind of like, from what I can see, it's like companies are now, with that strategy in particular, it's kind of like we've got no option but to do that too.
Yeah.
So yeah, what's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, really good points there. And thanks, Josh. With us, first of all, our branding with department store is we do everything, right? So I came from pet, which is very big in Australia, but it's one very, very small category. So department store, that pet is 2% of nothing, literally. Like it is not even a blip on the radar. But what we do have is the amount of brands that we have. We have brands that only us sell, that we sell. So we have that advantage, and we're also to the higher end of the market as well. So David Jones is your premium luxury brand. Like that is what we are. I compare ourselves to Maya in the sense of traffic and the way that the average person looks at our brand, but in actual fact, we are two very different brands. We're very, very different. Maya is a younger shopper. David Jones is an older shopper. So coming to long tail, you're right. We could sit here and go after basic keywords left, right, and center, right? But everyone else has been doing that for years. It's now getting to the point where you don't search red t-shirt in Google, right? You search for very, very specific requirements because that's who we are these days, right? We're highly educated. We know what we want. We want to get to our product as quickly as possible. We don't actually do that much research. We have an idea in our mind. So now it's whoever serves that best, whoever comes up in 1, 2, and 3, they're probably the ones who you're going to go for. We are starting to investigate that as well. We're starting to look at it and we're starting to see how we can incorporate that as well. And the irony of this is we know that it is a massive opportunity, but the problem is if we don't get onto this quicker and sooner rather than later, everyone else is just going to go a million miles an hour ahead of us. Maya has done that. And we're going to get further and further and further behind. So everything that we can do today with all of this stuff, basic stuff, good stuff, it's going to be dwarfed in, say, 6 months if we don't have the follow-up to it. So again, that's where that plan comes in. And there's months of planning that we have here. Where do we want to be? What are our gates? What are our key moments and our milestones? How are we tracking to this? And are we actually going to meet them? And part of that is long term. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to go about it? What are the opportunities? Is that something that we're ready for as well? And I think this is really important. You've got to be ready for it. Like you've got to have the time to invest in it as well, because it can go one of two ways. So you want to make sure that it's going to do the right thing. So I do think we have to start really focusing on it. I do think that we are because other people are doing it. And discoverability of your brand versus your product as well is becoming harder and harder. We have over 350,000 products on the David Jones website. So, our brand is out there, but trying to find the products that meets your requirements is becoming a lot harder. So yes, I think we do. Like on a scale of David Jones, absolutely, we have to start thinking about it.
Another question here. Get my steps up.
Okay. So Alex, since you and I both said since we started the company this year, like a new job, with David Jones, with so much historical baggage, like there's been probably multiple migrations going back, many, many years and stuff. How has it been like for you to get the full understanding of like what was it like in 2015, like the landscape of David Jones was smart, like how it is today, like what happened in between, etc. Because I was tracking David Jones with my keywords, and David Jones dominated from like 2015 to 2018. I know exactly why you guys cooked it, but I'm not going to go into it. So like,
No, why did we?
basically, you used to have a subdomain shop.david Jones, and you guys didn't migrate properly. Like, basically, say for example, there was 5,000 keywords for Chanel related keywords like Chanel number 5, Chanel perfume, etc. David Jones consistently outranked Maya. When they migrated from shop.davidjones, I think it was .com.au to davidjones.com, basically Chanel went to the homepage. Yep. So yeah, all that equity was gone. Maya took over the number 1, and my little retailer was ranking. So yeah, awesome. So basically, that's what my question was. Like, basically say like what's happened back then. But like, how do you get into an organization to understand like the full scope of history, where you are now, where you're lacking, or what happened even before time, before the fourth time, etc. Like in the full scope of where you are and why the company is where it's at from a digital perspective.
Yeah,
Sorry, we use Wayback Machine a lot.
I was there. That was not Wayback Machine. That was like
you nailed it with the migration. For sure, that wasn't handled well. It's actually no secret. You can quite easily pick it. You lose a lot of. We didn't have a 3 direct. There was no 3-1 direct line, right? It was nothing. So we had to rebuild all of that. When I came into the business, I took one sniff at SEO and kind of said no. Like it's like I don't want to look at it. I was fortunate enough that Jake came on board to support, didn't come on board, but House of Sam came on board as our agency and was able to help educate and actually piece it all together. Again, where do you start? Like, where do you look at it when things are looking so bad, you kind of like get overwhelmed? So piecing together the history was also really, really important. Understanding the legacy, the reasons why, and again, that development stream as well, that CRCD process and how it's working was really, really key, because Jake was telling me all this stuff. Everything's shit. I'm like, yes, I know. I work here, right? And this is like, the things that, I went through a migration with Petstock. It, again, wasn't the perfect migration. I wish that, it was, but it wasn't. But there are definitely learnings from there. But, understanding if you can change that. So yes, things are bad, but can you make the change in order to see the improvement was also key to that as well. So once we were able to see that full, that I guess scope of works in that pipeline, then everything else could start coming in. Okay, cool. We can change this. Great. We now need the tools. Let's have a look at it. And it was one step at a time. So once we got the first one and we set it up correctly, we could start to see the top. Once it's like an iceberg, right? So, you've got that much you can see, and then the rest is all underwater. And that's what we couldn't see. So, yeah, it was a bit daunting, but I think we've now got our groove. We definitely know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. Holding people accountable has also been really, really key to that too. And pestering, like I'm such a nag at the moment. It's like everyone must hate me, but it's when people start to think of it more, they hear about it more as well, then they're less likely to ignore it later on. So that's what, I've been really trying to do. And it is interesting that everyone is talking about SEO. Everyone in my business is now talking about SEO. They don't know what it is, right? They're like, oh, it's the Googles, and you type it in, and David Jones would come up first, and you're like, no, ideally yes, but no. If you've got enough money, let's pump it into AdWords, right? But it's the reference that's in the business. I kind of hate it, but I kind of love it. It's like SEO is kind of the free money, right? Everyone thinks it's free money. It should be free money, right? But it's earned. You've got to earn it. You've got to make sure that Google likes you. And I keep saying that. Google doesn't like us. They hate us. But they see people looking for us. So they're like, it's like that older brother that kind of loves his youngest brother, but gives him a lot of shit. That's who we are to Google. But yeah, it's daunting, but once you do start to see, the light at the end of the tunnel, it's easy. It's becoming easier and easier.
Awesome. I just also wanted to say that Alex has been there since January of this year, guys. So
Oh, really?
Yeah, James. Yeah, wow. Hopefully. Fingers crossed. We'll see.
Really?
Yeah. Busy man.
Yeah, great chat. Really good points you raised throughout the whole sort of stack of technical stuff. I had more of a high-level question. What's it like trying to sell the rest of the business? Your GMs, your executive, your board, your C-suite, like everyone on the idea of SEO and the priority list, especially of where it should be at. Because from my experience, it's solid. Yeah.
It's like next to impossible. Like I said, trying to explain the Googles is really really hard to your exec team who traditionally don't shop digitally. They always have shopped in store, number one. So there's the awakening. They know how important digital is, and they know how important the website is, but they don't necessarily know how important these elements are to us. However, what does talk to it is money. I hate doing this comparison, but it is the quickest and easiest way for people who pay the bills to understand how much they can save on their bills. So when you start breaking it down and saying, using your competitive data as well, if you have access to it. So, hey, Maya organically is doing X amount. We're doing nothing, right? And you do that comparison, right? It's the biggest fear. So take them on the journey, right? Don't talk in technical, talk very, very top level, pretty pictures. We'll always go a distance. I'm not going to lie here. So I was named 28 in top 50 e-commerce this year. And it's given me a little bit more of a, 3 months in, I don't think many people could say that they've actually been able to achieve this much in 3 months, right? Have this much buy-in, all this type of stuff. But it has been like, oh wow, he must know what he talks. He must know what he's talking about, right? So there's a confidence in that as well. Now you can earn that confidence, and I hate to say that that is why, but it allowed me to actually say, hey, these are the reasons why. This is why we're doing that. I'm not doing it from my point of view. This is not my personal point of view as well. This is not how I feel. This is what is best practice. This is what other businesses are doing. This is how much you could save. And it's all done in-house. Right? It's all done by the people that you have here today. So that's the other big one as well. Say no. Like, something comes back and you're like, I can't do that, or that's actually not achievable. Make sure that you stand your ground, because if there's the expectation that this can all happen, well, it's not going to happen, right? Things need to happen at certain times, and that's where the plan comes in. So if you can show with your plan that you've actually achieved this, and again, educating the business as being really key. SEO is a slow burning candle. Doesn't happen overnight, it takes time. Sometimes it does happen overnight. Sometimes it takes like 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 6 months, right? You don't know. But what we can do is do a lot of little things that make up one big thing, one big change. And these are the little things. So yes, do some examples and actually show what you can, show what you're preaching does work. And then again, that confidence comes in. And then again, you start getting people going, tell us about the SEOs. And then they're like, great. And then they walk off and they're like, oh, I just expect that you're doing it, right? I had to give a presentation today to the wider business about what SEO is as well. So that's coming from the executive team, that they feel like it's big enough now that the entire business now needs to know about it, so that they can actually start thinking about it more and more. So David Jones has come a long way. So it's 148 years old, right? So they're ingrained with what they know. They're a department store. They've come a long way in 3 months, from not thinking about it at all to now going, we want to do this. And it's really, really exciting.
That's amazing. I'm just going to scan the room. No other questions. Oh, we have one. We'll say that this is the last final one, because this has been awesome.
So, question for me. I suppose because of the price point, David Jones being very different to a Myer, Kmart, or Cotton, for example. Obviously, the essence of SEO is to drive non-brand traffic, right? To get as much visibility for non-brand terms as possible. I suppose the advantages that a lot of the Kmart or Cotton has, if someone just types in red dress or brown leather boots or whatever it may be, they get onto that listing page. You've got price points at around like $40 for a pair of shoes. Obviously, it's a little bit different with David Jones. With you're not necessarily knowing the intent behind someone who's searching for leather boots in terms of what they're willing to spend, and you can't necessarily target that through organic search like you can through digital marketing channels, through paid media, so on and so forth. Does that present a challenge to David Jones?
Yeah, absolutely. So. Nailed it right in the head. What our customer research does show is that, and I'm gonna sound very elitist here, so please bear with me, it's not how it's meant to come, but David Jones customer shops by brand, right? So in the example of boots, so leather boots, they don't type in leather boots, they type in R.M. Williams, right? So where I say our brands are key, they really are. They drive a significant amount of traffic to the David Jones site. And it's kind of like this spoken hub, right? So they come in, they're shopping for leather goods. So we understand that there are, in most cases, they're now male, they're shopping for leather goods, boots and shoes. We can start sending them down different paths. So with our keyword research, we know the bread and butter that you have to go for, right? That attracts a new customer. And this is where things start to get really, really difficult, which is the elitist, the high spending population of Australia is getting smaller and smaller, right? But their spend is getting bigger and bigger. So how do you attract a new customer into the brand? And we start to look at what aspiration looks like as well. So we start looking at those keywords and how those people are starting to trend and where they start to move into. So we actually start from top down and we start working our way back. Because yeah, we can't compete with the likes of Mecca or Sephora or, you know, or even mine some of these spaces as well. So coming back to it's like, where are the areas that we can win in, right? Ahrefs has been really good for that. So we've dumped in all of our, what we would class as our key areas, all of our categories, our brands, and we're starting to track how they're going. And we're starting to see what the opportunity was. We also piece out our unique brands that no one else sells, and we make sure that they are nurtured. They are the ones that, you know, no one else can get. So we should be number 1 or 2, right? So that's the strategy, is we look at our brands first. We see what are the opportunities, who our customers are as well, what are they shopping and where are they shopping for. We actually sell cotton on as well in store. So yeah, right. And again, some research that I did last year was anyone, you, me, you go in, you spend a lot of money on the blazer or the jacket, but you spend $5 on the tee that goes underneath, right? Because it's a simple white, you know? So we've got to have those two ends of the spectrum. So going after a cotton on customer, that's not right, but we'll go after, you know, the other end, you know, which is a high spending customer.
I actually have a question coming from the back of that, just because I think what you just said was really, really fascinating. Whenever you're looking at the luxury consumer, of course, you've got customer profiles that really understand that you said before. This is generally of an older generation. When creating content and things like that, is that something that really needs to be reflected in the tone of voice and the kind of way that the writers really understand what that customer is also reflecting as well, that you're kind of hamstring to that as well?
I would say that we're hand-strung to it, but we definitely, we know who our existing customer is and we know how they like to be spoken to. But we also, and it comes back to that aspiration piece as well. So we launched a campaign at the start of the year called Wonder World. So it was the reinvigoration of getting back out overseas and you know, travel, right? The thing that we'd always wanting to do the last few years, especially here in Melbourne. But that campaign there was really going back to the grassroots. But then also looking at the existing customer, that older demographic customer as well, but then the younger demographic too, right? So I won't go into too much detail about it, but have a look at the property market at the moment. Well, actually, don't look at it right now. Interest rates, that's a bad idea. Or do, I don't know. But, you know, say 6 months ago, right? Housing was booming because no one had money to spend on travel and the things that they thought were luxury, right? It's kind of doing the reverse now, right? So the housing market is starting to depreciate. So people are like, you know what? I'm not going to, you know, spend money on the house. I'm actually going to spend it on going overseas, right? Or I'm going to spend it on myself. I haven't done that for 2 years, right? So there are the key things that we're starting to look at with the way that we write that content too, right? So picking up on those trends, those habits, and we do look at, you know, what's happening in market a lot to help us, you know, to target them and to write to them, you know, and to make it passionate and to make you feel like, yeah, I can go to Japan, you know, and I do want to spend $400 on, you know, a purse, you know, that I know that's going to look good in Tokyo, right? You don't need it.
I mean, so.
But yeah,
Let's go.
Yeah, like exactly. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Alex Carter, everybody. That was awesome. So I'm just going to now start to close off the events. Just want to say thank you to absolutely everybody who made it out to Easy Go Gaming here. and to say thank you to Saijo Gaming for hosting us here. Again, this is a wonderful event. If this is your first time at SEO Collective, just to remind everybody, this is a not-for-profit organization that is literally just comprised of a board of SEOs just like yourselves or even aspiring SEOs, because we really want to be able to deliver the best, most current information, really just because we care. I think marketing here in Australia has a long way to go, but if we can be able to create wonderful communities like this that is so inclusive and really helpful for one another, you can have your questions answered, you can be able to network and be able to meet loads of really great people here. I really believe that this can be really the great epicenter of something truly great. So thank you so much for coming and being a part of this. It's been an honor. Woo, woo, woo. I also just want to say the fun times keep rolling in. We have for the very next SEO Collective a very good friend of ours, Cabot Shah, who will be coming here to do his keynote. Anyone who knows Cabot knows that he's an absolute titan here in the SEO community. He is the Enterprise SEO Manager of Australia Post. And he's been there, he's been doing some amazing things. He was formerly at Census. He is a really amazing, intelligent dude. And it will be really great to see what he has to say about the status search and being at the helm at Australia Post. So, like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. But also we have that Eventbrite link that is going to be live as of tonight. So get in, get your spots and things like that, because I really do think that this space is just going to keep growing. There's going to be a lot more of you, both here in person and online. And thank you so much for coming. Woo, 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 woo. Wow, we had people from the UK and Switzerland online. Wow, we have a lot of people. Thanks, guys.